From our Washington, D.C. studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hana Zubairi. Our top story today. CNN has apologized to British-American broadcaster Mehdi Hasan after a conservative commentator on the show suggested he should be killed on live television. The network removed Ryan Gurdusky after he told Hasan, "I hope your beeper doesn't go off." This was in reference to deadly attacks linked to Israel that killed 40 people in Lebanon last month, where pagers and walkie-talkies detonated. Gurdusky made the comment during a panel discussion hosted by Abby Phillips about the presidential election and Donald Trump's controversial Madison Square Garden rally in New York. Hasan, founder of the media company Zeteo, condemned racist and sexist remarks made by Trump and multiple speakers targeting minority groups. These included Black Americans, Latinos, and Jews. During the discussion, Hasan noted he is frequently labeled an anti-Semite due to his support for the Palestinian people. This prompted Gurdusky's offensive comment about the beeper. Fellow guests and the host condemned the personal attack live on air, and Phillips issued an on-air apology to Hasan and the audience. She also announced Gurdusky had been removed from the program. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump distanced himself from criticism, comparing his weekend rally in New York City to a 1939 gathering of Nazis at the same venue. At the Atlanta rally, Trump said, quote, "I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi." Trump said that the newest line from opponent Vice President Kamala Harris and her campaign is that, quote, "anyone who's not voting for her is a Nazi." Trump's comments come after the Democratic presidential candidate repeatedly called him a fascist. Democratic supporters had compared Trump to Adolf Hitler, Germany's fascist dictator who carried out the genocide of Jews during World War II. Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, previously told the New York Times that Trump reportedly said, quote, "Hitler did some good things," end quote. The former president allegedly said he wanted the kind of generals Hitler had. Now the Trump campaign denies the GOP candidate made the remarks. The latest polls released by polling tracker 538 show Trump leading by a razor-thin margin. The polls show Trump leading with 47.9%, while Harris is at 47.6% in Pennsylvania. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris says it's time for a new generation of leadership in America. Harris made the comments during a speech on the Ellipse. It is the site of Trump's January 6 rally, which incited an attack on Capitol Hill. Harris says she is ready to offer leadership as the next president of the United States of America. Harris, who just turned 60, is 18 years younger than her opponent, former President Donald Trump. Harris says if elected on day one, Trump will walk in with an enemy list. She says she will walk in with a to-do list. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled Virginia does not have to restore the registration of 1,600 voters, some of whom appear to have been wrongly removed. The court made the decision on its emergency docket and did not give a rationale for it. Providing a rationale is customary for rulings on expedited basis. All three liberal justices on the court, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, said they would not have halted a lower court ruling earlier in October ordering the state to restore the voter registration. The legal dispute centers on an August 7th executive order by Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican. Youngkin ordered the state to run its voter registration rolls against DMV data on a daily basis to check for non-citizens. The Justice Department and civil rights groups sued, saying the state was violating a federal law that prohibits systematic removals of voters within 90 days of a federal election. Swing states journalists fear retaliation by governments. Details come after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Reporters Without Borders says journalism is grappling with numerous crises in states where voters, especially, are reliant on the media. The advocacy group's report reveals journalists are concerned about hostility from local and state officials, as well as, quote, the economic viability of local newsrooms. The report is titled Press Freedom in Swing States: The Climate for U.S. Journalism Ahead of the 2024 Election. It focuses on Arizona, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Nevada. Executive Director of the group's U.S. branch, Clayton Weimer, says there can be no democracy without press freedom. Weimer says it is critically important to understand the issues confronting the news media in places most pivotal in American presidential elections. 94% of respondents from swing states say officials ignore public report requests or stall in providing records, making reporting difficult. Arizona officials were found to be the most egregious offenders. The state has the lowest overall political score. 85% of journalists in Arizona say leading politicians and political party leaders explicitly insult, threaten, or incite hatred against journalists. 81% of respondents in Pennsylvania say journalists are unable to earn a living wage. The report shows the median wage for journalists in the state is barely half Pennsylvania's living wage. 80% of respondents in Nevada say officials stall or ignore public records requests all or most of the time. Despite this, Nevada has the highest overall press freedom score. It has strong anti-SLAPP laws, widespread news distribution, and a median reporter salary slightly exceeding the state's living wage. The report comes days after Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump said at a rally in Arizona that the press is, quote, the enemy of the people. Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos is defending the newspaper's decision not to endorse Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. The move has resulted in the cancellation of more than 200,000 digital subscriptions. Bezos is facing scrutiny for the decision. The same day, Bezos held a meeting with Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. However, in a recent opinion piece, Bezos denied any connection. Bezos says most people believe the media is biased. He says the Washington Post and other newspapers needed to boost their credibility. Bezos says no candidate was informed or consulted about the decision and there was no quid pro quo. In a post on Friday, William Lewis, the Washington Post publisher and CEO, says that the newspaper would not be making an endorsement of a presidential candidate in any future presidential election. Lewis says that the newspaper is returning to the roots of not endorsing presidential candidates. The State Department has expressed concern about Israel's move to ban the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Spokesman Matthew Miller says the move poses risks for millions of Palestinians who rely on UNRWA for essential services. These include healthcare and primary and secondary education. Miller's remarks come after the Israeli parliament has passed a bill banning the agency from operating in the country. The legislation takes effect in 90 days. Miller says the U.S. is opposed to the bill. He says there could be consequences under U.S. law and U.S. policy for the implementation of this legislation. Turkey's Terror Crimes Investigation Bureau has filed charges of premeditated murder against the Israeli soldiers who deliberately targeted the Turkish-American activist. Ayşenur Ezgi Agi was fatally shot in the head while peacefully protesting the expansion of Israel's illegal settlements in occupied West Bank. Anadolu reported Sunday the Turkish bureau is classifying the killing of Agi as a crime against humanity. Agi was 26 years old and was volunteering with the International Solidarity Movement. The agency submitted evidence including eyewitness statements, photos, video footage, and an autopsy report to the Ankara Chief Public Prosecutor's Office. Last month, the Turkish Foreign Ministry said the country intends to seek international arrest warrants for those who killed Agi. IDF officials have called the killings unintentional. They claim the fatally shot was not aimed at her, but aimed at the key instigator of a violent riot in which dozens of Palestinian suspects burned tires and hurled rocks at the military. Palestinian prisoner support groups say prominent Palestinian leader Marwan Barghouti has been injured in a brutal assault in Megiddo prison in northern occupied Palestine. In a joint statement, the Commission of Detainees Affairs and the Palestinian Prisoner Society say Barghouti suffered bleeding in his right ear. The statement says Barghouti's right arm was also injured after the assault took place during his solitary confinement. The incident occurred on September the 9th. The statement accuses prison authorities of leaving Barghouti's injuries unattended, causing them to worsen. News of the attack on Barghouti was conveyed by a lawyer after attempts to meet the jailed leader failed. Barghouti was detained in 2002 by Israeli forces. He's serving a life-term sentence over charges of, quote, directly arming groups that killed and injured Israelis during the Second Palestinian Intifada. The suspect charged with murder in a knife attack that killed 3 young girls in Southport, UK, now faces additional charges related to terrorism and the production of toxic substances. Axel Ruda Cubana was arrested following a violent incident during a Taylor Swift-themed dance class on July 29th. The attack claimed the lives of Alice De Silva Aguirre, B.B. King, and Elsie Stancombe. Ruda Cubana is also alleged to have produced ricin, a powerful biological toxin commonly used as a poison. Authorities found a document titled Military Studies in the Jihad Against Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda training manual, in his possession. In addition to murder charges, Ruda Cubana is accused of attempting to murder 8 more children and 2 adults and possessing a bladed article during the attack. Despite the new Terrorism Act charges, Merseyside Police Chief Constable Serena Kennedy stated that the events of July 29th are not being classified as a terror incident. The new charges arose from evidence uncovered in Ruda Cubana's home near Southport, where ricin was discovered in early August. A report by Kimberly Murray says missing children and unmarked graves at Indian residential schools in Canada should be probed by a national commission. Murray is Ontario's first ever Assistant Deputy Attorney General for Aboriginal Justice. Murray says that the commission should have a 20-year mandate and be led by Indigenous representatives. The report is titled Upholding Sacred Obligations: Reparations for Missing and Disappeared Indigenous Children and Unmarked Burials in Canada. It was unveiled at a press conference in Quebec. Murray says a crucial step is pursuing justice for the children who were buried in unmarked graves at 130 residential schools across Canada. In some cases, the families were never told what happened to their children. Murray says the commission should also investigate the genocide and other crimes perpetrated by the federal and provincial governments against Indigenous people. It has taken 2 years to complete the report. It lays out 42 obligations that must be conducted by the Commission. These are meant to get to the truth and provide justice and reconciliation between Indigenous tribes and white settlers. A new report by World Meteorological Organization reveals global greenhouse gas levels surged to a new record last year, locking the planet into a path of rising temperatures for years ahead. The annual Greenhouse Gas Bulletin by the organization reveals carbon dioxide concentrations have increased 11.4% in 20 years. Secretary General Celeste Swallow says we are clearly off track to meet the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees centigrade and aiming for 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. Data from the organization's Global Atmosphere Watch network shows that globally, average surface concentration of CO2 reached 420 parts per million last year. Methane and nitrous oxide concentrations also increased sharply. The report shows that the atmospheric CO2 increase for 2023 was 2.3 part per million, higher than in 2022, but slightly below the previous 3 years. This increase marks the 12th consecutive year with CO2 levels rising by more than 2% per million annually. The uptick in CO2 in 2023 is attributed to a mix of persistently high fossil fuel emissions, extensive vegetation fires, and a potential decrease in forest carbon absorption. The WMO also noted natural events such as El Niño years can exacerbate the situation. That's all from our Washington, D.C. studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.